After transmigrating into a novel, she became besties with the original female lead. But that very same female lead actually hooked up with her fiancé. And she even had the audacity to say they could still be best friends. Furious, the girl wrote a letter to the crown prince. Since your bride-to-be and my fiancé are sleeping together, why don't we just have an affair of our own? But to her absolute shock, the crown prince actually agreed. Originally, Sierra was just a totally ordinary supporting character in the book. Because her fiancé was always messing around, sleeping with everyone, and even secretly torturing the female lead. He was sentenced to death by the male lead, the crown prince. And Sierra, simply for being the villain's fiancé, was executed right alongside him. To change her tragic fate from the original story, Sierra stepped in early to rescue the suffering female lead from the slums. She even helped the originally lonely and isolated girl successfully blend into high society. Just when Sierra thought that all she had to do was break off her engagement with her trashy fiancé, and everything would be perfectly fine, one day, the female lead, Tiliel, came looking for her. She cautiously hinted to Sierra that she had fallen for someone. Hearing this, Sierra looked up in total surprise. She never expected the female lead to jump into the original plotline this early. But seeing the other girl look so guilty, she sincerely gave her blessing, even though entering the original plotline meant that her own miserable life was about to begin. At first, Sierra assumed the guy Tiliel liked was the crown prince. Because in the novel, Tiliel was the literal definition of purity. She was the only one who could use holy magic to save the crown prince. So, Sierra asked if it was His Highness, the crown prince. But the female lead just looked confused. Sierra immediately felt a bad vibe. According to the original book, the crown prince was supposed to be her first love. So she started throwing out name after name to check. Everyone from a 5-year-old kid to an 80-year-old grandpa. But she just couldn't get a yes from the female lead. Finally, the girl gave a hint. It's someone you have a really bad relationship with. But Sierra had bad relationships with tons of people. She told the female lead to just spit it out. Finally, the female lead told Sierra it was Lord Asht. Hearing that name, Sierra was completely dumbfounded. Wait, wasn't that her fiancé's name? Sierra, I am so sorry. Since Lord Asht said he likes me too. I was thinking, maybe you two could just split up? It would be better for both of us. This explosive statement completely shattered Sierra's worldview. How could the bestie she had worked so hard to save fall for that absolute trash? Right at that moment, Asht pushed the door open and walked in. The second the female lead saw him, she put on a pathetic, wronged face and threw herself into his arms. Then, the cheating scumbag started aggressively yelling at his own fiancé. The girl simply couldn't believe it. How can you cheat and act like you are the victim? You are truly one of a kind. Then, with his arm around the female lead, Asht announced he was breaking off his engagement with Sierra. Before leaving, the female lead actually turned around and asked, even though this happened, we are still besties, right? It wasn't until this very moment that Sierra realized the female lead was a completely two-faced manipulator. When night fell, Sierra couldn't sleep at all. The absolute mess of a day had left her deeply agitated, especially when she thought about how the female lead slept with her fiancé, and then had the nerve to say something so utterly shameless. She just wanted to build a good relationship with the female lead to avoid getting executed. Why was she always surrounded by filthy cheaters? Turns out she had gone through the exact same thing in her past life. Her boyfriend would blatantly hook up with other women every single day. Ever since then, she deeply despised people like that. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew past. Thinking about how those cheating scumbags were probably sleeping peacefully, she realized that boiling with anger alone was useless. Sierra turned around and went back into her room. She noticed a letter sitting on her desk. It was from her constant efforts to play matchmaker, trying to get the female lead and the crown prince together. But now that such a ridiculous, melodramatic mess had happened, Sierra decided to just tell him the raw truth. Tiliel already has a lover. The arrangements we discussed previously can no longer continue. Sierra had barely sent the letter out using magic when, in the very next moment, a reply arrived. The royal family was already discussing their marriage. The thought of the female lead getting together with Asht while also getting engaged to the crown prince made Sierra feel like this whole situation was way too messed up. And ironically, both of these things directly affected her. The more Sierra thought about it, the angrier she got. She furiously scribbled out a reply to him. She refused to keep being a pathetic fool who just swallowed her pride. She decided to take a huge, reckless gamble. Since your highness's bride-to-be and my fiancé are now in that kind of relationship, then how about we just have a mutual affair? Sierra was absolutely furious at that moment. Whatever, screw it. You think you're the only ones who can screw around? But a few days later, Sierra completely regretted it. She never got a single reply from the crown prince after that. She actually thought she'd be dragged away for disrespecting the royal family. But unexpectedly, the crown prince just completely ignored her letter. Sierra sighed, amazed by the female lead's plot armor. Even if she cheats with another guy, the crown prince is still willing to cover for her out of love. Well then, I can only wish the three of you a long and happy life together. Just then, her maid, May, brought in breakfast looking incredibly worried. Her lady hadn't eaten much at all for the past few days. Sierra grabbed a sandwich. I need to eat to survive. Looking on the bright side, at least I broke off my engagement with that cheating scumbag. But May suddenly burst into tears. My poor lady is so heartbroken she can't even eat. And those two pieces of trash are just brushing it off. We absolutely cannot let them get away with this. I swear I'll find a way to ruin them both. Sierra quickly tried to comfort May, insisting she was totally fine. No, you are definitely not fine. May cried out, handing Sierra a mysterious item. This is a token for CL's romance agency. It's an underground guild that specializes in taking down cheating scumbags. They have a 100% 5-star rating in the business. Without missing a beat, a furious May dragged Sierra all the way to the guild. Once they got near the agency, May whispered a careful warning. The boss of this guild is a highly dangerous person. If anyone crosses her, she turns them into living dolls. And she brutally tortures anyone caught having an affair. I mean, it might be a little exaggerated. But please, you have to be super careful, my lady. However, in the very next second, a man appeared right in front of them. Actually, most of what you just said is entirely true. The green-haired guy then explained that only the actual client is allowed inside the guild. No matter who they are, everyone has to follow that rule. May hesitated for a moment. She was terrified to let her lady walk into a place like that all alone. But Sierra insisted on going in. Left with no choice, May could only beg the green-haired guy to look after her lady. She grabbed his hands and fiercely warned him. My lady is extremely fragile right now. If she ever says she wants to forgive those two cheating scumbags, you must absolutely refuse to listen to her. But the moment Sierra stepped inside the guild, everyone instantly panicked. Even the boss from earlier nervously bowed and asked, how would you like us to handle your fiancé and that woman? Sierra simply pulled back her cloak and smoothly snapped open her folding fan. Gone was the timid, fragile girl from just a moment ago. Before we get into that, I believe I need to hear an explanation. Who exactly couldn't keep their mouth shut? Why does everyone on the streets know about our underground guild? The second Sierra returned to her true domain, Ryder dropped to his knees, trembling as he apologized. Not only did he expand the business without permission and blow their cover, but he also failed to find a single piece of evidence regarding her fiancé's affair. Desperate to make up for his massive screw-up, Ryder volunteered to infiltrate the Dark Guild to investigate. But since Sierra had already broken off the engagement, there was absolutely no need to take that risk. Just stick to the usual evidence gathering, Sierra ordered. Relieved, Ryder then moved on to his report. A few days ago, a very strange client had submitted a commission. Strangely enough, the guy knew that Ryder wasn't the real boss. He said someone had actually proposed a mutual affair to him, so he wanted to come in for a consultation. Heart-pounding, Sierra quickly geared up to meet the client. I mean, there was no way the Crown Prince would actually visit a shady place like this, right? Still, just to be safe, she put on her voice changer. Taking a deep breath, Sierra pushed the door open. The rich scent of roses instantly filled her senses. Wait, is that the client's cologne? So, you're the boss of this guild? The man's attitude oozed pure confidence and arrogance. Sierra couldn't help but wildly guess his identity. With looks that stunning, if he was in high society, there was no way a socialite like her wouldn't know him. Plus, she didn't remember any character with striking crimson eyes from the original novel. As soon as Sierra sat down, the man bluntly ordered her to take off her mask. Offended, Sierra immediately stood up to leave. Seeing this, the man finally panicked and hurriedly apologized. Wait, I was just trying to confirm your identity. I truly meant no offense. Sierra noticed that the scent of the perfume had completely faded. She quickly promised the man she would keep his secret safe. With that, the man finally explained his request. A friend of mine received a letter from a certain lady, he began. She claimed that her fiancé was having an affair with my friend's bride-to-be. So, she suggested that my friend and her should have a revenge affair of their own. Sierra's eyes widened in panic as she listened. Wait a minute, isn't that my exact story? Did that mean the man sitting right in front of her was actually the Crown Prince in disguise? Just as Sierra felt her stomach drop, thinking she was absolute dead meat. The man suddenly added that his friend didn't actually have a fiancé. I've received plenty of marriage proposals, he chuckled. But an invitation to have a revenge affair? That's definitely a first. I'm honestly just curious about what was going through her head when she suggested it. I heard you're an expert when it comes to affairs, so I thought I'd come and get your professional opinion. Hearing this, Sierra let out a massive sigh of relief. After all, she had double-checked multiple times back then, and her sources had sworn that the royal family was busy discussing a marriage arrangement with the female lead. Sierra looked at the man across from her. It seemed like he already knew the answer and was just looking for validation. Wow, Ryder really had been making some incredibly easy money lately. Thinking of this, she put on a bright smile and congratulated him. That lady must really like you to make such a bold suggestion. The man seemed to agree with her take. He calmly told Sierra that he was actually going to accept the lady's proposal. For a brief second, Sierra actually felt a little envious. Even though he clearly didn't have a fiancé, he was still so genuinely stressed about how to reply to her. Burning with curiosity, Sierra asked about the mysterious lady's identity. She even offered that their guild could help investigate the lady's scumbag of a fiancé. But the man completely brushed the offer off. Instead, he casually warned Sierra, if that lady ever comes here with a request, you'd be better off just rejecting her flat out. The very next second, the man unleashed a spell right at Sierra. Forget everything I've said to you today. Instantly, Sierra found herself completely frozen in place, unable to move a single muscle. Worse yet, some strange man was reaching out, trying to pull the mask right off her face. In a sheer panic, Sierra somehow managed to snap right out of the spell. The man stumbled back, looking genuinely shocked by her resistance. Her memory now totally wiped, Sierra blankly blinked and asked who he was. Little did she know, her unique resistance to magic had just sparked the man's intense interest. For the next few days, Sierra basically locked herself inside the guild. She was dealing with these awful, unexplained headaches. Plus, whenever she went home, May would constantly pester her about whether she had taken down that cheating couple yet. Ryder actually suggested she just tell May the truth, but Sierra knew May would never buy it. To May, Sierra was just a frail, sickly little lady who constantly needed taking care of. Heck, there was even a rumor going around that Sierra would burst into tears of guilt if she accidentally stepped on a flower. Ryder was just about to point out that their sweet boss actually loved making cursed voodoo dolls. But Sierra quickly shut him up by hurling a pillow right at his face. Annoyed, Ryder shot back, demanding to know what the heck that doll in her hands was supposed to be, then. If it's not a cursed doll, who on earth would make something like that? He grumbled, and why did you have to be so incredibly specific when making it? You literally demanded, lips that provoke desire, a razor-sharp jawline, and cute but distinct ears. There is literally only one person in the entire empire with blonde hair and golden eyes like that. Sierra was completely speechless. She squeezed the little plushie tight against her chest. Okay, fine, it was indeed modeled directly after the Crown Prince, the male lead of the novel. But she absolutely did not put a curse on it. She only made the doll because she was such a massive fan of his character. Flustered, Sierra shoved the doll back onto the shelf and snapped at Ryder to hurry up and get back to work. She announced that she had some personal errands to run. Shortly after, Sierra went on a massive shopping spree, buying a whole bunch of things. Like maps, compasses, immigration guides, and survival gear. She had officially decided it was time to pack up and temporarily flee the Empire. Because there was absolutely no way she was going to get dragged into the messy love triangle between the male lead, the female lead, and her villainous fiancé. As soon as she got home, Sierra began frantically packing her bags. But suddenly, a servant knocked, announcing that she had a visitor. Not only that, but the mysterious guest insisted on seeing her face to face. Since they refused to reveal their name, Sierra immediately assumed that Ryder had gotten into some kind of huge mess he couldn't handle while she was out shopping. So, she sighed and told the servant to let them in. But to her absolute horror, the person walking through the door was her ultimate dream guy, the Crown Prince himself. Coming face to face with the man she obsessed over, Sierra just squeezed her eyes shut. She was absolutely convinced he was here to execute her. It wasn't until the servant awkwardly coughed that she snapped out of it. Flustered, she quickly ordered the guest to be escorted to the drawing room. Just as Sierra was about to lead the way, the Crown Prince suddenly stepped forward and handed her a massive, gorgeous bouquet of bright red roses. Completely stunned, Sierra gently took the flowers and politely murmured her thanks. But the Crown Prince's sharp eyes quickly darted over to the heavy travel bags in May's hands. A moment later, the two of them sat down in the drawing room. The Crown Prince leaned in, suddenly breaking the silence. Miss Ravelins, why did you go to such lengths to hide your identity? You brought me straight to the reception room without even checking who I am. What if I were some kind of dangerous criminal? Sierra's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly remembered that the Crown Prince's true face was one of the Empire's most heavily guarded secrets. It all went back to the evil dragon that once plagued the Empire. Even though the first Emperor managed to defeat the beast, he was struck by a terrible curse. And the current Crown Prince was the one suffering the absolute worst of its effects. On his coming-of-age ceremony, he was fated to mutate into a hideous, vicious monster. Knowing this, Sierra quickly put on an act. You brought me such gorgeous flowers. I'm guessing you can't be a bad guy, right? Right after that, the Crown Prince laid his cards on the table. My lady, you wrote me a letter, asking if we should get together. Well, I'm here today to accept your proposal. Hearing this, Sierra pretended she had just figured out who he was. Faking utter panic, she bowed deeply to the Crown Prince. Playing right along, he gently explained the situation. He told her that hardly anyone in the palace even knew what he looked like, and apologized, saying his sudden visit was actually the rude one. But Sierra was a social butterfly. There was no way she'd let the Crown Prince take the blame. She showered him with sweet, over-the-top compliments about both him and his flowers. The sheltered prince, who rarely ever left his home, blushed all the way to the tips of his ears. With trembling hands, he picked up his teacup. and gulped the whole thing down in one go. Sierra picked up her own cup and took a little sniff. Wait, this was literally just plain hot water. But, ever the smooth talker, she completely bluffed, telling him it was a rare tea imported from China. It has no color and no scent. Only people deeply in love can taste it. Since they were going to be spending a lot of time together from now on, the two of them formally introduced themselves. But the second Sierra said, "I look forward to being with you," a bold hand suddenly reached out toward her. The crown prince gently twirled a lock of her hair and whispered, "So, does this mean we're officially lovers now?" Sierra's heart did a massive flip-flop at his flirting. But just a second later, the prince got completely flustered and quickly pulled his hand away. She couldn't help but groan inwardly. Why the heck is he getting shy at the best part? One second he's a smooth operator, and the next he's a blushing mess. What is up with this guy? Later, they sat down to hash out the terms of their fake relationship. The deal was simple. The moment she managed to break her engagement with her cheating fiancé, their little contract would be over. Sierra knew full well that only the story's true female lead had the power to purify the prince's curse. But instead of agreeing, the crown prince stood up in total silence. Turning his back to her, he quietly asked, "If you didn't have a fiancé, would this contract even exist?" Sierra blinked, totally confused. "Well, if I didn't have a fiancé, there wouldn't be any need for a fake contract, right?" She completely missed the flash of heartbreak in his eyes. Masking his pain, he simply nodded. "Then, I promise to play the part of your lover until that day comes." Relieved that they had a deal, Sierra stood up and gently rested her hand on top of his. It was her way of sealing the pact. But right after, the prince suddenly murmured that they needed to test their boundaries as a couple. Before she could process that, he laced his fingers through hers and pulled her flush against his chest. "Are you okay with this?" he whispered. Sierra didn't pull away. Encouraged, the prince leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips as he went in for the kiss. But right at the very last second, Sierra panicked, her face burning red, and turned her head away. Having successfully tested the waters, the prince figured out that right now, anything short of a kiss was totally on the table. Satisfied, he got ready to head home and happily relive every second of it. "Wait," Sierra called out, stopping him in his tracks. She boldly asked him to make his grand debut as her new boyfriend, right in front of her cheating ex and his mistress. Cut to a chic cafe somewhere in the empire. One of the noble ladies was gossiping, whispering that Duval from the House of Asht had found himself yet another new fling. The other girls just rolled their eyes, classic Duval behavior. But just as the gossiping lady was about to drop the name of his new girl, Duval himself strolled right into the cafe, with the original female lead clinging to his arm. The three gossiping girls instantly dropped their jaws. Watching those two cheaters act all cozy and sickeningly sweet, the girls felt a huge wave of anger for Sierra. I mean, come on. The only reason that Homewrecker even had a place in society was all thanks to Sierra's help. The group quietly agreed they had to keep this a secret to protect Sierra's feelings. But literally 2 seconds later, their jaws hit the floor all over again. Because in walked Sierra, linked arm in arm with an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous guy with stunning blonde hair and golden eyes. And they were acting just as sickeningly sweet as the cheating couple. Sierra and the prince deliberately strutted right past her ex and his new toy. The crown prince and the cheating fiancé immediately locked eyes, glaring daggers at each other. Almost instinctively, Duval snatched his arm away from his mistress. Irritated and completely distracted, he snapped at her to just catch a cab home later by herself. Sierra scoffed in her head. "Oh, you've got the nerve to be mad? You can dish it out, but the second you get a taste of your own medicine, you totally lose it." With their mission accomplished, the crown prince softly bid his farewells to Sierra. But right as he left, the other woman called out, nervously asking if they could have a little chat. And then, he just stormed right toward Sierra. But right at that critical moment, the girl from earlier rushed over to her side. She forcibly pulled Sierra down to sit with them. After that, the girl kept taking jabs at the heroine, calling her totally ungrateful. However, the other two girls were way more interested in the handsome guy. Sierra casually lied, saying she met him at the temple. She claimed that no matter where she went, he would just follow her around. And honestly, maybe that's exactly what was ticking Duval off. Sierra's whole goal here? To completely enrage her fiancé. She wanted to make him so mad that he'd finally send over the annulment papers. Later that evening, when Sierra got back home, there wasn't a single letter from Duval waiting for her. So, she decided to turn up the heat on that scumbag just a little bit more. She wrote a letter, inviting the crown prince to go shopping for clothes with her the next day. Early the next morning, Sierra got all dressed up, ready for her date with the prince. But May came rushing in an absolute panic, to report that high society was buzzing with rumors about her young lady's love square. Seeing her lady stay completely silent, May grew even more anxious. He isn't some weird creep, is he? Sierra just laughed and told May. Well, he is a bit weird, but he's my lover now, you know. Such a bold confession caught May totally off guard, but she quickly grabbed Sierra's hands to cheer her on. It's all that jerk Duval's fault for treating you so terribly. I totally support you finding another man, my lady. But, why didn't you find someone better? Only a man who is incredibly handsome, rich, and powerful is truly worthy of you. Someone like the Crown Prince, for example. But, who could have guessed that the moment Sierra stepped off the stairs, she'd see the Crown Prince himself, leaning right against the wall. Her brain practically short-circuited on the spot. Seeing the prince flash a knowing smile, Sierra's face flushed bright red. Oh god, did he just hear all of that? Meanwhile, May's voice was still echoing from behind. My lady, please, just drop that shady guy from yesterday. A guy who thinks he can woo you just by holding some flowers. He's obviously a totally useless bum. It wasn't until she saw that very man standing right in front of her that May slapped her hands over her mouth in sheer horror. Sierra was so embarrassed she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. But the Crown Prince? He didn't mind at all. Lady Labyrinth, your useless bum has arrived. Once they were inside the carriage, the Crown Prince teased, that maid of yours really looks out for you, huh? Though, I am quite honored to be the only man worthy of you. Then, he leaned in and asked Sierra, and what do you think? Sierra figured that, being the Crown Prince, he'd probably love a little flattery. So, she smoothly agreed that he was indeed the most perfect man in the entire empire. But even the Crown Prince couldn't handle such back-to-back praise. He actually covered his face, too flushed to even look Sierra in the eye. Seeing him act so shy and cute, the girl couldn't help but let out a laugh. After they finally arrived at their destination, the Crown Prince gentlemanly took Sierra's hand as she stepped down from the carriage. Shall we go in and pick out a Mid-Autumn Festival gift? DHJKL, clear. Just type, Happy Mid-Autumn, in the comments to see the special effects. As soon as they entered, a shop assistant approached them with a bright smile. But the moment the assistant got a good look at who they were, panic flashed across her face. Seeing her nervous reaction, Sierra immediately guessed what was up. Duval and that heroine must be in here getting fitted for clothes. This was the absolute perfect chance to humiliate that scummy pair in front of everyone. So, with a sweet smile, she told the assistant she wanted to look around and see if there were any dresses that suited her. I am so sorry, my lady, but, the shop is currently under renovation. Such a pathetic excuse completely drained the last of Sierra's patience. You were perfectly welcoming when we walked through the door just a second ago. Plus, the shop is spotless. Tell me, exactly where is this renovation happening? Her overwhelming aura terrified the staff into complete silence. None of them dared to stand in their way anymore. Sierra let out a cold, sharp scoff. Oh, she was absolutely going to cause a scene today. After that, the terrified assistant led the two of them over to the jewelry section. The Crown Prince instantly saw right through the staff's little trick. They explicitly said they came to buy clothes when they walked in. Yet now they were being shown accessories? They're probably just trying to keep us from running into them, he figured. Sierra knew it too, but hey, her entire goal today was to crash into that wretched couple. However, she suddenly struggled with how she should actually address the Crown Prince. Just then, he gently reached out and soothed her. Just call me Ray, he said. His gentle, incredibly handsome look left the girl a little breathless. Okay, Ray. Yet, this sweet, tender moment was shattered in the very next second. Duval stormed over, absolutely furious, and demanded, what the hell are you two doing here? Seeing that neither of them was paying any attention to him, Duval stormed over and got right in Sierra's face. Is this guy really your lover? Hearing this, Sierra leaned against the Crown Prince's chest and smiled as she confessed. My sweet Ray and I are truly in love. Can't you tell? Duval's face instantly darkened. That is enough. I'm willing to let this whole thing slide. What right do you even have to talk about letting things slide? But to her surprise, the very next second, the total scumbag started putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. He grabbed Sierra's hand and swore, you are, and always will be, the only woman I truly love. The sheer shamelessness of it all made her turn pale, and she hurriedly stumbled back a few steps in horror. The Crown Prince couldn't stomach watching it anymore either, and flat out asked Duval if he was completely out of his mind. Having no clue who he was dealing with, Duval practically signed his own death warrant as he marched right up, pointed his finger right in the prince's face, and started going off. Oh, you wanna go? You wanna fight me right now? Right at the boiling point, Sierra threw herself between the two of them. She noticed that the Crown Prince seemed way too deep into his role. He was genuinely furious on her behalf. Just then, the two-faced female lead waltzed onto the battlefield wearing a stunning gown. As soon as Sierra saw her outfit, she immediately recognized it as a formal engagement dress. She was absolutely speechless at Duval's sheer audacity. He was literally picking out an engagement dress with another woman, and at the exact same time, running over here to declare his undying love for her. Meanwhile, the other woman started prying into who the Crown Prince was. That's when it hit Sierra. These two didn't even know each other at all. She had her suspicions back when they met at the coffee shop. Their marriage must have been strictly arranged without them ever actually meeting face to face. Hearing the woman's question, the Crown Prince reached over and pulled a deep in thought Sierra firmly against his side. Looking right at the miserable couple, he formally introduced himself. I am Lady Ravelin's devoted lover. Watching the Crown Prince and Sierra shamelessly flirt right in front of his face, Duval gritted his teeth in absolute fury. He reached out and violently yanked Sierra's arm. You better get back over here right now, while I'm still asking nicely. But her fiercely protective fake boyfriend instantly stepped in and shielded her. Where exactly did you learn that it's okay to put your hands on another man's woman? Duval completely lost it and started screaming. Get the hell out of my way. I am her fiancé. He had completely forgotten about the girl standing right next to him in her engagement dress. She clutched her skirt tightly and stammered. Young M ashed. What on earth do you mean by that? The scumbag whipped his head around, desperately trying to explain himself. But Sierra wasn't about to give him the chance. She leaned right in and threw fuel on the fire. Oh, young M ashed just came running right over to confess his feelings to me out of absolutely nowhere. He even said he's still madly in love with me. The other woman instantly burst into delicate, dramatic tears. But you said you were going to marry me. The scumbag went into full panic mode. He started stuttering that Sierra was just making the whole thing up. Sierra just laughed. Why would I ever lie to you, Tiliel? We're besties, aren't we? Seeing that the situation was spiraling completely out of control, Duval completely ignored the crying woman's struggles and practically dragged her away from the scene. Afterwards, the Crown Prince escorted Sierra safely back home. Even though she had totally gone there to cause a scene, she couldn't help but feel like that trashy couple ended up stealing the spotlight anyway. Still, judging by the results, she'd call it a massive success. Just then, the Crown Prince suddenly spoke up. My lady, how in the world did you end up engaged to a guy like that? Sierra sighed and explained that it was strictly an arrangement between their families. She had absolutely no say in the matter. Hearing this, the Crown Prince's brow furrowed in a deep frown. He guessed that the Asht family wouldn't just let this go without a fight. But Sierra assured him there was no need to worry at all. After all, Duval was actually the one who demanded they break the engagement in the first place. Plus, she had secretly recorded absolutely everything using a magic device. The recording had crystal clear footage of Duval demanding to call off the wedding. Right after that, Sierra suddenly remembered something she was dying to know. Your Highness, were you and Tiliel actually discussing marriage before you'd even met her? The Crown Prince's eyes immediately started darting around the room. After a moment of hesitation, he admitted that yes, that was exactly what happened. So, how did it feel when you finally saw Tiliel today? Did your heart skip a beat? Did it go thump thump? She asked, mostly because the original story had explicitly mentioned that the very first time the Crown Prince laid eyes on Tiliel and her holy purification powers, he would fall hopelessly, uncontrollably in love. My heart was definitely pounding, but that's because I was holding you in my arms at the time. Getting to look them in the eye and say that I am your lover, it honestly made me the happiest man alive. But this beautiful, long-brewed confession flew completely over Sierra's head. She just thought he was playing his part perfectly. I know, right? I'm so happy I get to tell everyone that His Highness is my lover, too. But you must really want this little game of pretend to end as soon as possible, right? The Crown Prince agreed, though his heart clearly wasn't in it. However, just when Sierra thought she'd be receiving the annulment papers any day now, Duval suddenly barged right into her room. With an arrogant smirk on his face, he boldly declared, I am absolutely not breaking off our engagement. Sierra had originally thought her fiancé was just a bit foolish, and assumed he still had at least a shred of common sense. But looking at him now, he was simply beyond saving. She told him not to waste his breath. We've already reached the point of finalizing the annulment. What's the use of saying you won't do it now? As she spoke, she pulled out a magical device and gave it a gentle tap. Instantly, a projection popped up, showing Duval shamelessly hugging his mistress. Duval jumped back in shock when he saw it. He snatched the magical device and smashed it to pieces on the floor. Then, getting his cocky attitude back, he sneered, well, now your evidence is gone. What are you gonna do about it? Sierra just lifted her chin in disdain. Did he really think she only had one copy of that device? But to her absolute disbelief, Duval remained completely shameless even after being exposed. He actually had the nerve to say he wouldn't mind if she took a lover too. You should save that garbage for your precious Tiliel. But the man quickly cut her off. You are my only fiancé, Lady Sierra. For a moment, a heavy silence fell between them. Finally, Sierra couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. Hearing you say that, anyone who didn't know better would think you're actually pure and devoted. Since you refuse to send the annulment papers, I'll just have to send them to you myself. Hearing this, Duval didn't even get mad. He simply gave her a warning. Do you really think your father will allow you to cancel this? It turned out that the Lavalins family had once been in a dire financial crisis. They only managed to restore their former glory thanks to the backing of the Asht family. But what Duval didn't know was, Sierra had already thought of this ages ago. So, without missing a beat, she kicked the cheating jerk out. Instead of standing here making threats, you'd better go home and sign those papers. You have exactly 3 weeks. Past that, don't even think about showing your face in high society ever again. Even the guard at the door warned him to leave immediately. Young M dashed. Surely you know how terrifying my lady's power can be. Suppressing his rage, Duval gritted his teeth and told Sierra to just wait and see. He slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Just then, May cautiously poked her head inside. Seeing the shattered glass all over the floor, she rushed in, frantically asking if her lady was hurt. As May swept up the mess, she told Sierra that the letter they sent to Count Valentine recently still hadn't received a reply. Since Count Valentine was the official witness to her engagement with Duval, they absolutely needed his signature to finalize the annulment. Right after, May handed her a crumpled letter. This came for you too, my lady. The handwriting was so messy it looked like chicken scratch, making it impossible to tell who it was from. But the moment Sierra took it, she recognized Ryder's handwriting. The letter said Count Valentine was planning to flee town just to avoid signing the papers. Hearing this, she immediately told May to get her outdoor clothes ready. She was going to catch that runaway old man herself. Later, she headed straight to the park the Count frequented, ready to ambush him. The Crown Prince, worried for her safety, insisted on coming along. Even though Sierra assured him that getting a signature wouldn't be dangerous. The Crown Prince wasn't taking any chances, especially since he heard the Ashton Valentine families were quite close. As a result, the two of them waited there for a solid hour, but there was no sign of the old man. Seeing the girl he liked looking so gloomy over the annulment, the Crown Prince gently took Sierra's hand and led her away, softly asking if she liked eating sweets. Sierra was wondering what he was up to, when she suddenly realized he was heading straight for a cotton candy stall. He bought her a massive puff of cotton candy, telling her with a warm smile that sweet things always make you feel better. Sierra found this quite amusing. How do you know it's sweet? Do they really have cotton candy in the royal palace? The Crown Prince patiently explained. Although they didn't have it in the palace, he had heard plenty of people talking about it. So, he knew it was sweet. Hearing his earnest answer, she couldn't resist the urge to tease him a little. She solemnly told him that cotton candy had to be washed first to be healthier and tastier. Then, she handed it right back to him. She asked him to go over to the fountain and wash it clean for her. Taking her very seriously, the Crown Prince carefully pinched off a small piece of the cotton candy, only to watch it instantly disappear in the water. Having failed his mission, he returned and told her in a dejected voice. The cotton candy, it's gone. Seeing the Crown Prince looking as heartbroken as a sad little puppy, Sierra laughed so hard at his cute pout that tears actually welled up in her eyes. That was when the Crown Prince finally realized he'd been completely played. But just as she was wiping away her tears, she caught a glimpse of a familiar shadow lurking in the distance. It was the exact man they'd been hunting for, Count Valentine. Just moments ago, the cowardly Count had been trying to slip away under the cover of darkness. Suddenly, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Someone was following him. He whipped around, only to come face to face with Sierra. At first, he didn't even recognize who she was. That is, until she spoke up. Count Valentine, I've been writing to you, but you keep ignoring my letters. So, I decided to come find you myself. The moment he realized what she was after, the Count panicked and tried to bolt in the opposite direction. But his escape route was immediately cut off by the Crown Prince. Trapped between a rock and a hard place, the Count was practically dragged into a small, secluded room. Even then, his eyes kept darting around, desperately looking for a way out. Sierra saw right through him. Don't even think about it, she warned. Just be a good boy and sign these annulment papers. Otherwise, you're not leaving this room. Seeing the Crown Prince physically blocking the only exit, the Count decided to drop the act. He flat out refused, declaring there was absolutely no way he'd sign those papers. He tried to use a pathetic excuse, claiming it would destroy the relationship between their three noble families. But Sierra knew damn well her family and the Count's family had always despised each other. She strongly suspected that Duval had already bribed this weasel. Yet, the Count kept insisting that he was only doing this because he wanted her and Duval to get back together. Sierra was absolutely done talking to a brick wall. Losing her patience, a dark, menacing magic began to swirl in the palm of her hand. Well, since words clearly aren't working with you, she sneered, I guess we'll just have to do things my way. The Count absolutely lost his mind in terror. Countless writhing, black shadows erupted around him, looking ready to drag him straight down to hell. He begged and pleaded like a madman, but Sierra stared down at him without a single ounce of mercy in her eyes. The Crown Prince quickly realized things were going too far. He rushed forward and grabbed her arm to stop her. But honestly, he didn't give a damn about the Count's life. He was just terrified that his girl would pass out from using too much mana. Hearing the prince's voice, Sierra snapped out of her trance. Her head was spinning like crazy. She had barely used any magic at all, yet it felt like it had completely drained the life out of her. Seeing her sway, the prince gently suggested he take her home to rest. There's no point talking to trash like him anyway, he muttered. Sierra nodded. Fine, she would just have to find another way to break this damn engagement. Meanwhile, the pathetic Count, still shaking from his near-death experience, mumbled to himself, without a notary's signature. Not even the royal family can just cancel it. The very next day, Sierra was back at her guild, aggressively squishing a plush doll of the Crown Prince to vent her frustration. She had really planned on using force to get that signature yesterday, and it totally failed. But honestly, if the prince hadn't stopped her, things could have gotten incredibly ugly. She pinched the plushie's little face. I really am grateful he was there, she sighed. But, what the hell am I supposed to do now? When she said she had another plan yesterday, she was totally faking it. As she sat there, racking her brain trying to figure out exactly how Duval managed to bribe a man who literally owned the Eastern gold mines, her subordinate, Ryder, suddenly burst into the room to give his report. Boss, we just got a massive commission, he said. A client wants our help filing for divorce against her cheating bastard of a husband. Sierra skimmed through the paperwork, and her jaw dropped. The cheating husband? It was none other than Count Valentine. And the mistress he was sleeping with? It was Duval's own sister, Layla. Sierra sat there, completely stunned. Wow, so the sister is just as much of a scumbag as Duval, she muttered. Ryder then handed her a small magical device. It contained crystal clear recordings of Layla and the Count's filthy little hookups. Ryder opened his mouth to explain the juicy details, but Sierra felt violently ill and immediately snapped at him to shut up. Everything clicked into place. Now she knew exactly why the Count was covering for Duval. And just like that, the perfect plan to break her engagement formed in her mind. She gave Ryder a massive pat on the back, and ordered him to get everything ready. She was going to wrap up this commission faster than lightning. Not long after, the Asht family hosted a massive, high society art banquet. The moment he laid eyes on Layla, Count Valentine practically lit up like a Christmas tree, clapping enthusiastically. But right next to him, his wife, the Countess, looked absolutely miserable. She had to sit there in agony, watching her own husband openly flirt and make bedroom eyes at Layla. But right at that moment, a man quietly approached the Countess. He leaned in, whispering something into her ear, and discreetly slipped a magical device into her hand. A split second later, all the color drained from Layla and the Count's faces in sheer panic. Their filthy, scandalous affair was blasting for the entire banquet to hear. The entire ballroom erupted into vicious whispers about their disgusting behavior. And right on cue, the Countess broke down into agonizing, heartbroken tears. Even though she saw it coming, when the truth was finally exposed, she just couldn't hold back her emotions. Earl Valentine scrambled to make excuses, swearing it was all a huge misunderstanding. But before that scumbag could even finish his lie, the Countess burst out of the hall. And all of this was brilliantly orchestrated by Sierra. Fleeing the venue, the Countess looked utterly shattered. Part of her was so relieved that she could finally divorce that deadbeat husband of hers. But years of marriage still left her weeping in sorrow. Just as she was about to head home and gather the divorce papers, Sierra called out to her from behind. As the boss of the underground guild, she knew exactly how a piece of trash like the Earl operated. He wouldn't just let this go. So, she warmly invited the Countess back to her estate to talk things over. But honestly, even Sierra didn't expect the guy to be such a sick psycho. Calling him a scumbag was a complete understatement. At first, Sierra thought this was just your average, run-of-the-mill request. But the moment she spotted the bruises around the Countess's eyes, she instantly realized what kind of monster she was dealing with. You see, Earl Valentine was originally just a nobody commoner. He hit the jackpot by marrying the daughter of the Valentine family, and managed to snatch up the entire estate. And just to cling onto his lavish lifestyle as an earl, whenever his wife dared to ask for a divorce, he would beat her bloody. Knowing this, Sierra gently urged the Countess to stay at her mansion. That way, she could personally keep her safe. The Countess was completely baffled. Why would a total stranger like Sierra go out of her way to help her so much? Honestly, at first, Sierra just wanted the Countess to take back the Valentine name so she could sign some papers for her. But seeing the poor woman looking so frail and shattered, it brought back bitter memories of her own past, that agonizing sting of being betrayed by the ones she trusted most. Soon after, the two of them struck a formal deal. As soon as the title of Earl was rightfully returned to the Countess, she would officially sign the documents to annul the engagement between Sierra and Duval. Meanwhile, that toxic trio of scumbags was absolutely losing their minds. Duval just couldn't wrap his head around it. Why had Sierra completely changed overnight? In the past, she was always walking on eggshells, desperate to keep him happy. But now, not only did she not give a damn about his little affair, she even showed up to confront him with a guy who was 100 times hotter than he was. Damn it, Duval lost his temper and slammed his fist onto the table. But the other two members of the scumbag trio? They were even more terrified. By now, the filthy scandal between Layla and Earl Valentine had spread like wildfire across the entire empire. Duval was nursing a massive headache over the whole mess. Since he was the genius who originally set his sister up with the Earl, he desperately needed to calm down and figure out a way out of this disaster. If the Earl actually got divorced, it wouldn't just completely ruin his sister's reputation. It would completely derail their family's future, too. Right then, Layla chimed in, suggesting they fight fire with fire. She figured, if they could just dig up some dirty secrets about the Countess, Maybe they could blackmail her into backing off. But the Earl knew his wife all too well. She was totally squeaky clean. Then, suddenly, a light bulb went off in his head. He arrogantly assumed that his wife's biggest weakness was her guilt over turning him in. So, he pitched a twisted idea to Duval. Since the damage was already done, all they had to do was kidnap his wife and force her to take back everything she said. Later that night, after an incredibly long day, Sierra finally got ready for bed. But the second her head hit the pillow, she had this nagging feeling that she was forgetting something. Oh right, the Crown Prince. She thought back to how sweet and obedient he had been to her lately. Whether it was dragging him to dress shops or making him stalk Earl Valentine, the guy just happily agreed to everything without a single complaint. And yet, she hadn't even given him a proper thank you. Sierra sighed to herself. This man is seriously way too kind for his own good. If he keeps acting this innocent, she thought, someone like me is going to end up stabbing him in the back one day. I mean, come on. The Crown Prince was the kind of guy who would actually believe you if you told him to wash his cotton candy before eating it. Just as Sierra was thinking about checking in on him to see if he needed any help. Poof, a letter appeared out of thin air right in front of her face. Sierra grabbed the letter and cracked it open, and immediately let out an icy, mocking laugh. Who would have guessed that those three pathetic losers would actually try to pull such a laughably stupid stunt to take her down? Over the next few days, the Countess was practically glowing. Getting away from that toxic, abusive husband had done wonders for her mental health. But Sierra, thanks to that mysterious letter the other night, knew perfectly well that their enemies were going to make their final, desperate move tonight. Catching a glimpse of the nervous panic on the Countess's face, Sierra gently took her hands. Hey, don't you worry about a thing, she reassured her. You are inside the Labyrinth estate. And I am the Labyrinth. As the direct descendant of the legendary hero who drove back the Dragon Tribe. The Labyrinth family wielded the terrifying power of the Phantom Maze. Inside that maze, countless evil spirits and bloodthirsty monsters. All absolutely loyal to the commands of the Labyrinth. But tonight, two incredibly stupid suckers were sent by Earl Valentine to break into the estate and kidnap the Countess. Creeping through the shadows, the two goons quietly slipped towards the Countess's bedroom. They still had thick ropes in their hands, but what they never expected was there wasn't a single soul on the bed. Suddenly, the man heard a noise and whipped his head around. What on earth are you two doing in the dead of night? There stood Sierra, striding toward them confidently in a long black gown. Then she muttered to herself with a smirk, "Ah, I get it now. You're here to throw your lives away, aren't you?" In a flash, swirling clouds of black mist began rising from the man's body, scaring him so badly he bolted in terror. Little did they know, Sierra had already unleashed her labyrinth of phantoms. She gently raised her hand, and instantly, an endless swarm of evil spirits spawned, chasing right after the two men. The truly terrifying thing about this power is that once you're inside the labyrinth, there is zero chance of escape. You can't even use your own magic or abilities. And just as the two thugs were cursing their luck, the floor beneath their feet suddenly shattered into pieces, and countless dark spirits came pouring out from the cracks. This forced the two of them into another frantic, desperate run for their lives. Watching the crystal ball and listening to their agonizing screams, Sierra didn't feel a single ounce of pity. After all, the only reason these absolute scumbags were here tonight was to frame the poor Countess with dirty rumors of an affair. Thinking of this, Sierra's resolve hardened. She swore to make Count Valentine suffer something 10,000 times worse than just getting a divorce or losing his noble title. The next moment, a massive three-headed hound materialized right in front of her. Even though it looked absolutely terrifying, its bark sounded exactly like a tiny, squeaky puppy. It was something that always left Sierra completely speechless. Suddenly, Sierra's vision started to blur. Sustaining the labyrinth of phantoms was draining a massive amount of her physical and mental energy. So, Sierra ordered the three-headed hound to spit the two men out. But the beast stubbornly refused, arguing that they had barely been in there for an hour. Finally, after Sierra laid down the law, the giant hound dropped the two violently shivering thugs right at her feet. "Start talking. Who sent you?" she demanded coldly, "because if you don't feel like sharing, I wouldn't mind tossing you back into the labyrinth for round 2. Meanwhile, over in a tavern, Count Valentine was still leisurely sipping his wine. He was grinning from ear to ear, fully believing that his wife would soon be nailed with the cheating scandal. But the very next second, the tavern doors crashed open with a loud bang. On the captain's barked orders, a squad of royal knights instantly swarmed the count and pinned him down. They dragged him roughly before the captain to hear his charges. "Count Valentine, you are formally charged with brutal domestic violence, criminal intimidation, and stalking. You are hereby under arrest." Watching her husband being hauled away in chains, the countess stood quietly to the side, a bitter wave of sorrow washing over her heart. She let out a heavy sigh, relieved that this nightmare was finally over. But standing next to her, Sierra firmly shook her head, declaring that this wasn't nearly enough. "For a cheating scumbag like him," Sierra said coldly, "we need to make sure he tastes what true agony really feels like." Meanwhile, locked up in a cold jail cell, Count Valentine was still in total shock. He simply couldn't believe that his usually submissive and timid wife actually had the guts to do this to him. Suddenly, he snapped his head up, only to find his wife standing right outside the iron bars, staring at him with a chilling, deadpan expression. He practically threw himself at the bars, desperately begging for her forgiveness and pleading with her to pay his bail to get him out. But her next words sent shivers straight down his spine. "We are getting a divorce. I never want to spend another waking second with you." The pathetic man tried frantically to grab onto this last lifeline, but his wife's heart had turned entirely to stone. She coldly informed him that all the evidence of his blatant affairs would be handed over to the authorities first thing tomorrow morning. And with that, she pulled out a thick legal document. "This is a deed transferring all of the Valentine family's assets entirely to your name," she said. "Consider it my final act of mercy toward you." A look of pure, unadulterated greed instantly washed over his face. But the second he eagerly scribbled his signature on the dotted line, he immediately reverted back to his arrogant self, bursting into malicious laughter and openly mocking his wife for being so incredibly stupid. The Countess just stood there, listening to him in complete silence. Any tiny, lingering shred of faith she had left in this man completely vanished. Right on cue, Sierra stepped out from the shadows. "Congratulations on adopting a mountain of crushing debt," Sierra cheered mockingly. Hearing this, the Count scoffed, looking at her like she had completely lost her mind. "Are you blind?" he sneered. "This document says in black and white that all the family assets belong to me." Sierra gracefully picked up a copy of the deed from the floor and offered him a very friendly reminder. "Oh, didn't anyone ever teach you that debts are also counted as assets? Think about it, how many astronomical loans have you taken out behind everyone's back lately? Not to mention," she smiled darkly, "your precious mining operations are going to be completely shut down very, very soon." Suddenly, sheer panic flooded the Count's face. He threw himself at the bars again, frantically trying to backtrack and beg his wife for mercy. But seeing him act like such a pathetic, cornered rat just made Sierra burst into laughter. Without even glancing back at his crying face, the two women turned on their heels and walked right out of the dungeon. Once everything finally settled down, the Countess turned to Sierra with a heart full of deep gratitude. But Sierra just brushed it off with a warm smile, saying she only did what needed to be done. More than anything, she was just incredibly happy that the Countess could finally start a beautiful, free life of her own. But right at that moment, her vision blurred. She collapsed heavily to the floor and blacked out. By the time she finally woke up, days had passed. Seeing her lady open her eyes, May rushed over in a panic to check on her. Even Sierra hadn't expected the backlash from using her powers this time to be so severe. Her head was still spinning, throbbing so hard it felt like it was going to split open. Suddenly, she heard a commotion outside the estate. May explained that it was Duval. He had been out there making a scene for days, demanding to see her. Noticing Sierra's irritated expression, May offered to have the guards throw that scumbag out. As for why Duval was here, Sierra knew exactly what he wanted. Because of that whole cheating scandal, his sister had been slapped with a massive fine of 1 billion gold coins. That kind of money would bleed even the Asht family dry. But honestly, whatever happened to that trash had absolutely nothing to do with her. Sierra just rolled over and went back to sleep. However, long after she had drifted off, a massive dragon actually materialized right inside her room. The rustling noises jolted her awake. Bleary-eyed, she noticed a mysterious figure standing right next to her bed. Startled, Sierra shot up, only to realize that His Highness, the Crown Prince, was standing right there in her bedroom. "Your Highness?" she murmured in utter confusion. Seeing that the girl was awake, the prince panicked. I'm not a pervert. I just saw your window was left open, and I wanted to sneak in to close it for you." But Sierra's brain was still totally foggy, and she fully believed this was just a dream. She groggily wondered if she had been playing with that plushie of the prince a bit too much lately. And that's why she was having such a vivid dream about him. Well, since it was just a dream, the girl suddenly got a whole lot bolder. She patted the mattress next to her. "Come sit, let's chat." But the moment the crown prince caught sight of her thin nightgown, he immediately turned his head away, blushing furiously. Isn't this a bit inappropriate?" With that, he quickly tried to excuse himself. "Now that I see you're safe, I can rest easy. I'll come back for a formal visit tomorrow morning." Hearing his rejection, Sierra just stared at him deadpan. "Seriously? This is my dream. So why the hell isn't he doing what I want?" She aggressively patted the bed again, demanding he sit down. Left with no choice, the flustered prince awkwardly shimmied to the very edge of the footboard, practically sitting 800 meters away from her. The second he sat down, he started stammering out another apology. I was just really worried you were in pain. So I just wanted to check on you." Sierra blinked. "Wait, my room is on the 3rd floor. How exactly did you get in here?" But right as she asked, she reminded herself that none of this mattered. It was a dream, after all. Why stress over the logic? Then, she heard the prince calmly state that he had flown in. Sierra was absolutely baffled. Wait, who's dreaming here? You or me? Or, Are you telling me you're actually some kind of mage, your highness? The prince sighed internally. He wasn't a mage by any means, but he definitely knew how to fly. Out of nowhere, Sierra excitedly demanded that he show off his flying skills right then and there. But exposing his monstrous dragon curse was the prince's absolute biggest fear. He tried to gently brush it off. Ah, that's a bit difficult to do right now. Huh? Why? Is there not enough space to fly in here? Well, it's not exactly that. Hearing his evasive answer only fueled Sierra's curiosity even more. So, a wicked little idea popped into her head. She suddenly let out 2 violent, fake coughs. Cough, cough. Oh no, I think I've caught a terminal illness. The kind where I won't stop coughing unless the crown prince flies for me. Seeing this, the poor prince completely fell for it. He rushed over in a panic. Please, don't strain yourself. I'll do it, I'll show you right now. He nervously averted his eyes. He was terrified of seeing a look of utter disgust on Sierra's face. Truth is, I flew up here by turning into a dragon. If you really want to see my unique talent, I just beg you not to push me away once you see my true form. But to his utter shock, Sierra just gave him a soft, gentle smile. She even told him that seeing a real dragon had been her ultimate childhood dream. Hearing that, the heavy dread in the prince's heart finally lifted. Taking a deep breath, he began his draconic transformation. Swirls of sinister, pitch-black mist began to violently erupt, completely engulfing his body. Staring at this terrifying scene, a memory suddenly clicked in Sierra's head. She remembered the original novel's description of the evil dragon. It had said, an ominous black light will consume the agonizing crown prince, and in the end, the monstrous dragon will obliterate everything in the royal palace. By then, the entire continent was supposed to plunge into endless despair. But, when the crown prince finally finished his transformation, Sierra ended up seeing a tiny, little black dragon baby, with its pudgy little chicken wings and cute, round paws. Sierra immediately covered her mouth, overwhelmed by the cuteness. Is this really the evil dragon that's supposed to destroy the continent in the original story? Rumor had it that just a single flap of its wings would send dozens of people to their graves. But looking at it now, they probably died from losing their minds over how adorable it is. Your Highness, can I pet you? She asked softly. The little black dragon purred happily in response. She finally realized that the crown prince couldn't speak in this form. The tiny dragon baby shamelessly nuzzled against her hand. Sierra suddenly asked, Your Highness, can you breathe fire? Seeing her eyes sparkling with pure excitement, the crown prince obediently blew a little puff of fire just to make her smile. After that, whether it was spitting acid or breathing ice, he happily did it all for her. That's when a mischievous thought crossed Sierra's mind. She scooped the little dragon up to her face and playfully declared that she was going to kidnap him and keep him as her pet forever. Hearing that, the crown prince started wriggling around in her hands. After playing together for a while, too, Sierra started feeling a bit dizzy again. The little dragon purred with genuine concern. He then used his little mouth to pull the blanket up and cover her. Sierra gently begged him, Please, don't leave me. She asked him to stay by her side until morning. So, the crown prince rested his head on her arm and slept there the entire night. It wasn't until the next morning that he finally slipped away quietly. Meanwhile, Sierra's father was planning to head home to help arrange his daughter's wedding. Hearing this, the red-haired woman next to him froze for a second. She quickly covered it up with a smile, agreeing that she, too, couldn't wait to see her stepdaughter in a wedding dress. In reality, though, she was secretly scheming. Once Sierra was married off to the Asht family, there would be no one left to fight her son for the marquis title. But, just as she was about to send her son the good news, a carrier pigeon suddenly dropped off a letter. Wondering what could possibly be so urgent, she ripped it open, only to find out that Sierra and Duval had broken off their engagement. Meanwhile, the heroine naively thought Duval would be just as thrilled about this as she was. The thought even had her excitedly stressing over where they should hold their own engagement party. Should I wear that dress Duval picked out for me? She wondered, but when the servant finally brought her in to see him, the man just glared at her with eyes like ice and told her to get lost. Are you really this blind? I can't believe you actually showed up here. Panic set in as the heroine frantically tried to explain. I just heard that you and Sierra broke off your engagement. So, I came to see when we should hold ours. Duval let out a cruel, mocking laugh as he stood up. And why the hell would I ever get engaged to you? Still clinging to her naive hopes, she desperately brought up his past promises. But you said once you were done with Sierra, we'd get married. Duval couldn't believe she was actually this stupid. Losing his patience, he spat, You were nothing but a pawn. A pathetic little tool to make Sierra jealous. It finally hit her. All those sweet nothings, all the romance, it was all a sick act. She wasn't even a stand-in for Sierra. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor, trembling as she mumbled. But, you said I was the one you loved. Refusing to accept it, she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Even when Sierra pushed you away, even when she begged to break the engagement. Couldn't you just let her go, and choose me instead? She sobbed, looking utterly broken and pitiful. But Duval was a total scumbag. He was completely immune to her desperate begging. Without even trying to hide his absolute disgust, he sneered, I could never love someone as pathetic as you. His icy words tore right through her heart, but incredibly, she still wouldn't let it go. She even tried copying Sierra's mannerisms, desperately hoping to win him back. This is just pathetic. I already thought you were annoying enough. Duval muttered, turning his back on her. Utterly repulsed by the sight of her, he barked at his servants, get that piece of trash out of my sight. He made sure she would never be allowed near him again. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Sierra was out on a sweet, romantic stroll with the Crown Prince. Have you been sleeping well lately, Sierra? You look so much better than the last time we met. Sierra couldn't help but feel a little confused. Wait, was it the last time we saw each other when we were tracking Count Valentine? Suddenly, a large, warm hand reached out, gently resting against her forehead to check her temperature. Looks like your fever really has broken. This intimate gesture brought the dream from that night rushing back to Sierra's mind. The Crown Prince had stroked her forehead exactly like this back then. The memory made her let out a couple of awkward, shy coughs. This immediately drew the Crown Prince's concern. My lady, why is your face so red? Are you running a fever again? The girl quickly brushed it off, explaining that it was just too hot outside. She then let out a deep sigh of relief. Now that all those massive, complicated headaches were completely resolved. It's been so long since I felt this at peace, she smiled. I'm just really happy to see your highness looking so well. Crown Prince couldn't help but stare at her, completely mesmerized. It took him quite a while to finally murmur, I've missed you too. Just a little while ago, I was actually so worried. Worried about what I would do if you started distancing yourself from me. The girl was completely baffled by the Crown Prince's words. Why on earth would I distance myself from your highness? But in the very next second, his handsome face leaned right in close. Then, let's get even closer from now on. His voice carried a dominant, undeniable charm that left the girl absolutely no room to refuse. Right after that, the Crown Prince gently clasped a beautiful bracelet onto Sierra's wrist, giving it to her as a commemorative gift for officially breaking off her engagement. Sierra lifted her hand, looking at the exquisite bracelet with pure joy. But she also wanted to find a way to return his highness's favor. So, she asked how his relationship with Tiliel was progressing. She didn't even notice that the Crown Prince's expression instantly turned freezing cold. Looking down, the Crown Prince explained that the situation was a bit complicated. A rather troublesome person has gotten involved, so it's going to take some time to sort out. Saying this, he pleaded with Sierra to keep up their fake romantic relationship just a little longer. Sierra mistakenly assumed that the troublesome person he mentioned was Duval, so she happily agreed. She told the Crown Prince not to worry, promising that she would find a way to patch things up and get his relationship with Tiliel back to normal. But just when Sierra thought the Crown Prince had asked her out purely to extend their fake dating contract, the Crown Prince suddenly handed her an official invitation. Sierra's face completely dropped the moment she read it. It was an invitation to the Red Full Moon Festival. And in the original story, this was exactly where the Crown Prince would transform into a massive dragon in front of everyone. Because on this very day, the evil dragon's power would drastically spike, a terrifying fact that had always haunted the people. That was why the royal family held grand sacrifices every year, begging the gods to prevent the evil dragon from resurrecting. And to soothe the deep anxieties of the Empire's citizens, the Red Full Moon Festival was born. Everyone treated this day as just an ordinary, festive tradition. But only Sierra, who knew the original plot inside and out, knew the dark truth. The Crown Prince was going to turn into a terrifying dragon on this exact day and plunge the entire empire into absolute chaos. Back then, it was all thanks to the original female-led Tiliel and her purifying powers, that they managed to avert Asht. But Sierra definitely didn't have that kind of magical ability. She seriously started debating whether she should just lock the Crown Prince in a giant iron cage. Her deeply panicked expression didn't escape the Crown Prince's notice. He asked with deep concern if her body still hadn't fully recovered. Even though the founding families are strictly required to attend this festival. If you're really not feeling up to it, I'll figure out a way to excuse you. Sierra quickly waved her hands, explaining that she was perfectly fine. She then signed her name on the invitation while tentatively asking, is Ray going to attend the festival this time too? After all, it is the Red Full Moon. I really feel like it would be much safer if you just stayed indoors. But the Crown Prince gently insisted, saying he had been looking forward to attending this festival with Sierra for a long time. Because going on a date at the festival feels totally different from our usual ones, he smiled. Sierra helplessly face-palmed. What on earth was he thinking? A literal life or death crisis is looming and he is worried about dating? Just as she was racking her brain for a way to make him realize just how serious this was, the Crown Prince suddenly grabbed her hands, which were trembling from sheer panic. I know exactly what you're worried about, he said softly. But I promise, I won't let anything like that happen. Please, just trust me. Looking into the Crown Prince's resolute, calming eyes, Sierra's racing heart finally began to settle down. With that, the Crown Prince formally extended his invitation. So, for this Red Full Moon Festival, would you do me the honor of going on a date with me? A few days later, the Red Full Moon Festival kicked off right on schedule. But Sierra was already blushing furiously, utterly defeated by the Crown Prince's shameless antics. It turned out that to return the favor for the bracelet, Sierra had recently hand-embroidered a special handkerchief for him. Who would have thought that ever since then, the prince would deliberately leave that exact handkerchief hanging out of his pocket every single day. He even acted like he was ready to enshrine it as a literal national treasure. Dying of embarrassment, Sierra begged the Crown Prince to hide her sloppy handiwork. But the Crown Prince just smirked and said, "Anything you embroider is a priceless treasure to me." And just like that, the two playfully flirted with each other like any ordinary, love-struck couple. Sierra wasn't as worried as she had been the past few days, because the Crown Prince had assured her that the temple had already brewed a potion to suppress the evil dragon's power. Just then, a loud shout came from behind her. The local theater was promoting a new play called The Legend of the Evil Dragon. Honestly, Sierra wasn't all that interested, but with the massive crowd pushing them forward, before they knew it, the two of them were squeezed right into the theater's seats. Well, since we're already here, we might as well watch a bit, she thought. The play was about an evil dragon who deeply loved a human woman. But this woman was wicked. She used the dragon's power to conquer the world. In the end, humanity blamed the wicked woman for all the atrocities, and burned her at the stake. Driven mad by grief, the dragon unleashed his fury upon the world, and cast a brutal curse upon the heroes. At first, Sierra thought it was just a fairy tale about the first emperor defeating the dragon. But realizing that the dragon's curse has lasted for over 1,000 years, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Could this curse just be waiting for the wicked woman's soul to awaken again? Lost in thought, she drifted off to sleep. In her dream, she saw a magnificent golden dragon. Before she could even react, the dragon nudged its large face gently against hers. She was a little confused, sure. But strangely, she wasn't scared at all. She even reached out to stroke its scales. Suddenly, she woke up with a gasp, jumping right out of her seat and blabbering. "Stop it, you pervy dragon." Only when she snapped back to reality did she realize that the Crown Prince was holding her hand. "You were sleeping so deeply, my lady. I was worried you'd fall, so I held your hand. I didn't mean to make you mad." Flustered, she quickly explained that she was just dreaming. I wasn't talking to you, I swear." The Crown Prince chuckled, finding her embarrassment adorable. "Well, this pervy prince sincerely apologizes." By the time the play ended, the sun was setting. The Crown Prince turned to her. "Was the play really that boring? It put you right to sleep." Sierra's face immediately flushed red again. "I was just resting my eyes." "Alright, then what did you think of the story?" Sierra thought for a moment. "Honestly, I kind of envy the wicked woman. To receive eternal love from a dragon. And who knows, maybe ruling the world wasn't even that important to her. Maybe just having a dragon who loved her unconditionally was enough." Hearing this, the Crown Prince, the actual dragon in disguise, felt his heart skip a beat. He was just about to confess his true identity to her, when some arrogant, absolute garbage of a guy blocked their path. He stood there, practically begging for a death wish, running his mouth with empty threats. Sierra just stared in disbelief. "Why are you even here? We are completely done," she snapped. Duval flinched at her words, his face instantly twisting into an ugly scowl. He marched straight up to the Crown Prince and demanded they step into the woods to settle things. In Duval's twisted mind, this new guy was the only reason his relationship had fallen apart. He roughly squeezed the Crown Prince's arm. "Look at these scrawny little arms. Don't tell me you're too scared to face me alone? You're just some low-born peasant trying to leech off Sierra's wealth, aren't you?" Sierra gasped, horrified that this idiot was insulting the Crown Prince. She immediately yelled at Duval to get lost. But to her absolute shock, the Crown Prince actually accepted the challenge. Sierra frantically pulled him aside. "The red full moon is going to rise soon," she whispered, but he gently squeezed her hand. "I will be perfectly fine, my lady. I told you, I have a way to handle it." Seeing his confidence, she swallowed her protests. "Just, please hurry back," she pleaded. But the absolute second the Crown Prince turned his back to her, that sweet, gentle smile completely vanished. "As you wish," he muttered darkly. "Let's have a little private chat." Once the two men stepped into the shadows of the woods, Duval immediately launched into his pathetic insults. "I saw Sierra buying clothes for you the other day. What? Are you so broke you can't even afford your own shirt?" In his mind, he had already pegged the prince as a pathetic, gold-digging pretty boy. "Name your price. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just take the cash, and stay the hell away from Sierra." The Crown Prince gave absolutely no response, while Duval was still running his mouth. But the very next second, Duval's pupils involuntarily dilated in sheer panic, his face twisting in agony as he nearly collapsed to the dirt. He suddenly realized he couldn't breathe, desperately hacking and coughing to ease the suffocating pain. Just as he realized his fatal mistake of provoking such a terrifying monster, the Crown Prince's icy voice echoed out. For once, we actually agree on something. I will absolutely not tolerate a piece of scum like you breathing the same air as Sierra. The moment he finished speaking, the crushing agony vanished. But before Duval could even catch his breath, he met the man's glowing crimson eyes, glaring down at him with absolute, terrifying disdain. I could snap your neck right here and now, whenever I please. But I refuse to let Sierra's eyes be tainted by such a disgusting sight. The Crown Prince commanded Duval to his feet. I will give you exactly one more chance. Duval was utterly terrified to find his body moving completely on its own, entirely at the mercy of the prince's horrifying power. Get out of my sight right now. Run, before I tear you apart. And once you leave, you will forget every single thing that happened here today. As he watched Duval stumble away in terror, the prince figured he had finally dealt with that total scumbag for good. But the very next instant, a skull-splitting headache hit him out of nowhere. Under the eerie glow of the crimson full moon, his heart began to pound wildly in his chest. He couldn't believe it. Just tapping into a fraction of his magic was enough to make the evil dragon's power inside him spiral totally out of control. He frantically reached inside his coat for the potion, his hands shaking violently as he brought the vial to his lips. But the tremors were just too severe. The glass vial slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering into a million pieces on the hard ground. Meanwhile, Sierra was still right where she had been, waiting for the prince to come back. She figured an all-bark no-bite loser like Duval could not possibly pose any real threat to the crown prince. But for some reason, a heavy knot of anxiety was twisting in her stomach. Suddenly, she realized the woods were dead silent. A wave of pure panic washed over her. Because honestly, she fully expected to hear Duval screaming his lungs out while getting a well-deserved beating. But there was absolutely nothing. Fearing the worst, she took off sprinting toward the tree line. She desperately screamed the prince's name as she ran, but only dead silence answered her. Then, she froze. Shards of broken glass and the crown prince's clothes lay scattered in the dirt. Just as her mind jumped to the most horrific conclusions, a massive shadow suddenly loomed over her, completely swallowing her small frame. A freezing cold sweat broke out across Sierra's back. Oh my god! The calamitous evil dragon destined to doom the Empire was standing right behind her. She shrieked in absolute terror, throwing her arms over her head and waiting for the end. But the deadly strike never came. Peeking through her fingers, she was stunned to see an insanely adorable, chunky little black baby dragon staring back at her with the happiest grin. It finally clicked in her head. The baby black dragon from the other night. It really was the crown prince. Without thinking twice, she bundled the little guy up inside her jacket and snuck him all the way back home. The servants nearly had a heart attack seeing their lady walk in completely covered in dirt. Despite Sierra waving it off and saying she was totally fine, her sharp-eyed maid, May, immediately locked onto the men's coat in her arms. You were just out on a date. Why do you look like you were wrestling in the mud? Realizing May was about to unleash a storm of wildly inappropriate questions, Sierra booked it for the stairs. My lady, I'm telling you for your own good. May yelled from below, practically pulling her hair out in frustration. It does not count as a real relationship unless you guys kiss. Do not let a guy like that play with your feelings. Sierra slammed her bedroom door shut with a loud bang. This highly suspicious behavior only confirmed May's theory that her lady was definitely hiding something. Safely inside her room, Sierra quickly unzipped her jacket so the baby dragon could catch a breath. Seeing that he wasn't suffocating or in any pain, she finally let out a massive sigh of relief. Still totally desperate for answers, she grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, sliding them right in front of the scaly little guy. She prayed he could just write down whatever cure would turn him back into a human. Right on cue, the little baby dragon grabbed the pen and started furiously scribbling away. Halfway through his frantic writing, Sierra leaned in close to get a peek. Staring back at her, in bold letters, was the word kiss. Wait a minute, are you seriously telling me a simple kiss breaks the curse? But the baby dragon vigorously shook his head. Blushing a deep shade of red, he furiously kept writing. Do you also agree that we're only a real couple if we kiss? You are literally a baby dragon right now, and you're still obsessing over that? Oh, for heaven's sake. Then it hit her, the shattered glass. He must have failed to take his medicine. She instantly decided she had to report this crisis to the royal family. But the tiny dragon panicked, vigorously shaking his head before scratching out a dead serious reply. Do not tell the royals. It turns out, there was a terrifying secret about what happens when the crown prince shifts into his dragon form. Right now, Sierra is the only one who knows he still has his sanity. And even without a red full moon, the crown prince can still freely change his form. Sierra's anxious heart finally settled down. Seeing the little dragon's paws turn bright red just from writing a few words, she figured he probably didn't have the energy to wander off anywhere else. At least he wouldn't run into any danger like this. And even if he did, she could handle it with her powers. The cheeky little dragon blushed and nodded in agreement. Right at that moment, a knock came from the door. It was May, coming to collect Sierra's laundry. But suddenly, she heard Sierra let out a startled gasp. She quickly threw the door open to check on her lady's safety, only to see a black dragon pouncing right onto Sierra's chest. May's brain completely short-circuited on the spot. Sierra panicked, having no idea how to explain this. The baby black dragon darted out of her arms, and instantly cast a spell on May. Within seconds, May's eyes glazed over. She looked completely dazed as she absent-mindedly asked Sierra, "My lady, where did you get this flying lizard?" She mumbled, reaching out a hand, wanting to pet it. Smack. The dragon swatted her hand away with its tail. May immediately pouted, looking totally wronged. "My lady, are you really going to keep such a mean pet?" Sierra laughed awkwardly, rushing to explain that he actually listened to her very well. Hearing this, the baby dragon immediately played the good boy, climbing onto Sierra's hand and shamelessly nuzzling deep into her embrace. "Well, it seems this lizard knows who its Asht is." May teased lightly, before turning around and leaving the room. As soon as May was gone, Sierra asked the little dragon if that was some kind of illusion magic. With that magic, she could confidently take the little dragon outside. But, carrying a notebook around to chat outdoors would be a huge hassle. So, Sierra suggested using signs to communicate from now on. 2 circles will mean yes. An X will mean no. And finally, if you're ever feeling uncomfortable or sad, you can use this sign. The little dragon nodded in agreement, then gently placed his tiny paw right on top of Sierra's hand. Soon, it was time for bed. Sierra carried the baby dragon into one of the guest rooms. She set the little guy down gently on the bed, and tucked him warmly under the covers. Noticing his little face turning bright red, Sierra gave him a stern warning. "Even if your highness is just a cute little baby dragon right now, no means no. You can't just cross the line." With that, she firmly closed the door. Early the next morning, Sierra was already stressing over what to feed a dragon for breakfast. After tossing the idea around, she decided it was best to just go and ask him herself. But halfway there, a servant called out to stop her. It was an urgent dispatch from the Marquis in the south. Sierra ripped open the letter and read it. Instantly, her face went ice cold. Her father was actually trying to force her to get re-engaged to Duval. If she refused, he threatened to kick her out of the family. Back when Sierra was first engaged to Duval, her father had used the excuse that they desperately needed the Asht family's support, guilt-tripping her into looking at the bigger picture. Because of that, she had worked her fingers to the bone making money. The sheer amount of wealth she had brought into the family was so massive that even the entire Asht family's fortune couldn't compare. And yet, her father was still threatening to throw her out. He even had the nerve to claim it was for her own good. Staring at her father's pathetic, thinly veiled excuses, Sierra's heart swelled with agonizing betrayal and absolute fury. She finally realized her father was dead set on passing the title down to his stepson. Beside her, the little dragon watched blankly as Sierra completely lost her temper. Unable to speak, he simply wrapped his tiny arms around hers to comfort her. That one simple, quiet gesture slowly brought her racing heart back down. Sierra poured her heart out to the little dragon, asking what she was supposed to do now. "I really thought I was making things better, but in the blink of an eye, I'm right back to square one." The unfairness of it all was choking her. She just couldn't let it go. "It feels like all my hard work over the years was for absolutely nothing." Nestled in her arms, the baby dragon knew it was time for him to step up. He gently pulled Sierra's hand toward him, and pressed his tiny paw firmly into her palm. The next moment, life coach Black Dragon was officially online. Going back to square one isn't always a bad thing. Sierra, as long as you set your mind to it, you can accomplish absolutely anything. In an instant, the heavy anxiety weighing on her was completely wiped away by the little dragon's comfort. Seeing Sierra finally get her spark back, the little dragon let his guard down and let out a big, sleepy yawn. Seeing this, Sierra quickly scooped him up into her arms. "Did I keep you up too late with all my complaining?" she whispered softly, as she turned to carry him back to his room. But the little dragon cub held tightly onto Sierra's hand, refusing to let go. Seeing that it wouldn't go back to its room, she knew this naughty little dragon just wanted to sleep in her bed again. The dragon cub in her arms looked up with sparkling eyes, making no secret of its longing and anticipation. Sierra was finally won over by its adorable face, and agreed they could sleep together, but just for tonight. However, in the middle of the night, the dragon cub quietly crept out of bed, left a soft kiss on his beloved girl's forehead, and then flew right out of the room. Looking back at Sierra sleeping soundly on the bed, the dragon cub couldn't bear to leave her, but it knew its true identity would only bring her disashed. To reassure Sierra, the dragon cub deliberately left behind a letter. It promised to appear whenever Sierra needed it most. The next day, Sierra found the letter left on her desk. She couldn't understand why Ray had just left without any explanation, although Sierra went on with her life as usual in the days that followed. Quietly handling all sorts of commissions at the guild, she couldn't stop worrying deep down if Ray would ever come back. When the day of the royal ball arrived, Mate cheerfully handed Sierra the most luxurious jewelry. "Since you're going alone this time, my lady, you absolutely have to look more stunning than any other girl at the ball. Who knows where the hell that man you were dating ran off to?" He didn't even leave a single letter. Sierra awkwardly explained that maybe his identity made it difficult for him to show up. To her surprise, May got even more worked up. Gritting her teeth, she declared she definitely had to teach him a lesson. Before Sierra could even react, May grabbed her and started doing her hair and makeup. Soon enough, it was time for the ball. Lady Sierra Labyrinths has arrived. Such a simple announcement, yet it drew the stares of countless male nobles. Accompanied by the crisp click-clack of her high heels, Sierra appeared before the crowd, elegantly holding a folding fan. But as she entered the venue, the nobles noticed she didn't have a partner, and immediately started making snide remarks. Everyone assumed that without Ashti's support, the Labyrinths family was completely worthless. But Sierra couldn't care less. She knew these mediocre fools were only looking at the surface, and soon, she would completely turn the Labyrinths family's status around. Just then, an announcement from the door caught everyone's attention. Duke Epsilade has arrived. The crowd immediately started whispering about this Duke family that had appeared out of nowhere. Even Sierra, a veteran of the social scene, had never heard of them. But the moment they laid eyes on the Duke, everyone bowed to him as if they were under a spell. But the Duke completely ignored them all. He walked straight toward Sierra. When he stopped in front of her and offered a greeting, Sierra finally snapped out of it, lifting her dress to return the curtsy. Then, the Duke held out his hand, inviting Sierra for a private chat. Somehow, Sierra found herself accepting his offer, because she inexplicably felt that the man in front of her was somewhat familiar. Out on the balcony, the Duke casually asked her, why a lady like her had come to the ball all alone. Actually, I did have a partner. But circumstances changed. The Duke kept pressing. And who did you wish had come with you? Someone who looks an awful lot like the Duke. Hearing this, the Duke invited Sierra to be his partner at the full moon festival ball. And Sierra said yes. But even she didn't know why she agreed to it. Right then, the Duke confessed to her that the one who had been by her side all along was actually him. Before Sierra could even process what that meant, the Duke pulled her close into his arms. Look at me closely, Sierra. I don't understand what you're talking about, Ray. No, I mean, Duke Epsilade. Sierra just felt a sharp pain in her head, leaving her too confused to think straight. It turned out the reason she couldn't recognize the man in front of her was because he had cast an illusion spell. And the only reason he did it was just so he could be with Sierra. After all, there were still a few people in the royal palace who recognized his true face. But from now on, he wouldn't. Less than hide anything from her ever again. The Crown Prince gently stroked the girl's cheek, pulling her completely into his embrace. Please believe me, Sierra. Suddenly, Sierra caught a whiff of a familiar scent. By the time she snapped back to reality, she realized she was pressed intimately against the Duke. He was looking at her with such intense eyes, like he wanted to devour her right then and there. Her heart skipped a beat, and her face flushed bright red. Then, looking into his eyes, Sierra suddenly saw the shadow of the Crown Prince. Ray, she murmured, completely stunned. The Duke just gave a soft, knowing smile, silently confirming that he was, in fact, the Crown Prince. But to his absolute surprise, the very next second, Sierra grabbed him by the collar. How could you just leave without saying a single word? She scolded. Yet, instead of getting angry, the Crown Prince felt his heart unexpectedly flutter at her outburst. She had been worried sick about him this whole time. But no matter how gently he tried to calm her down, she just wouldn't listen. Left with no other choice, the Crown Prince suddenly pulled her right back into his arms. Well, do you know who I am now? He teased, a mischievous, wicked edge to his voice. Hearing that, Sierra gasped and shakily let go. She couldn't believe she had just been manhandling the Crown Prince. She seriously debated just throwing herself off the balcony before she could be arrested and executed for disrespecting the royal family. Plus, all that emotional rambling just now made her want to die of embarrassment. But what she didn't realize was that the Crown Prince was taking in every second of her adorable, flustered panic. He chuckled playfully. You were losing sleep worrying about me. How could I ever punish you for that? That smooth line made Sierra blush furiously from head to toe. Afterward, he explained everything to her. He told her he would be using this disguise for a while, just so he could stay by her side and help her out. I know you're perfectly capable of handling things on your own, he said softly, but it's always nice to have someone looking out for you, isn't it? With that, he offered her his hand, and the two strolled back into the ballroom, arm in arm. Meanwhile, out on the dance floor, two passing nobles spotted a figure approaching from a distance. Recognizing the extravagant dress, they both immediately assumed it was Lady Lavalyn's. They rushed over to greet her enthusiastically, but the second they saw her face, they awkwardly backpedaled. Oh, our deepest apologies, miss. We've mistaken you for someone else. Once the strange woman walked away, the two nobles burst into outright laughter, loudly mocking her and wondering if she had completely lost her mind. That woman wearing the exact same dress as Sierra was none other than the original female lead, Tiliel. And she was searching frantically, looking everywhere for Sierra. Suddenly, she whipped her head around and locked eyes with Sierra, who had just returned with the Duke. A twisted, obsessive smile crept onto Tiliel's face as she stepped right into their path. There you are, she greeted, her voice eerily sweet. I've been looking all over for you, Sierra. Sierra froze in shock. The female lead, Tiliel, was wearing an exact replica of her own dress. You see, in the past, Tiliel had grown up in the slums, surviving freezing winters and starving day after day. But then, a miracle happened. Sierra appeared like a literal goddess and pulled her out of that hellish life. Ever since that day, Tiliel became dangerously obsessed with her savior. She dreamed of becoming exactly like Sierra. To Tiliel, everything Sierra did exuded absolute grace and confidence. Even the way she stood was flawless. Plus, she had an incredibly powerful, aristocratic fiancé. Desperate to become just as perfect as her idol, Tiliel decided the best way was to just copy her. She started small, copying her hairstyles and dresses. But then, she wanted to steal the affection of Sierra's fiancé, too. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, Sierra remained the brightest, most dazzling star in any room. Back in the present, seeing Tiliel standing there sent a terrifying chill down Sierra's spine. She just couldn't wrap her head around it. Why on earth was Tiliel looking so smug while wearing a blatant copy of her dress? It didn't do her any favors. If anything, she was just making a complete laughingstock of herself in front of high society. While Sierra tried to figure out what game the girl was playing, Tiliel stepped uncomfortably close and asked to talk. Just like the old days. Just the two of us, she cooed. You'll come with me, won't you, Sierra? She whispered, gripping Sierra's hands tightly. The surrounding nobles immediately started whispering and gossiping. Feeling cornered, Sierra had no choice but to agree to speak with her privately on the balcony. The crown prince, clearly worried about what this crazy girl might do, offered to go with her. But Sierra shook her head. Despite everything, she still couldn't believe someone as timid as Tiliel would actually try to hurt her. Seeing the crown prince was still on edge, Sierra could only softly reassure him that she would be right back. Besides, her skills were more than enough to handle Tiliel. Before long, the two stepped out onto the balcony. Sierra immediately noticed that not only was Tiliel wearing the exact same dress, but even her accessories were a perfect match. She demanded to know what Tiliel was trying to pull by dressing like that. To her surprise, Tiliel just started giggling. She excitedly told Sierra that she had run around to every single boutique in town. I bought every single thing you've ever bought. It's just a shame there was only one of this dress left. So, I hired a special tailor to make it look exactly like yours. Before Sierra could even process her shock, Tiliel went on to brag about how it was money well spent. Well, doesn't it look just like yours? This way, everyone will think we're just as close as we used to be. Sierra instantly felt an icy chill run down her spine. She snapped at Tiliel to stop spouting such nonsense. But the moment the words left her mouth, Tiliel frantically grabbed Sierra's hands, begging for forgiveness. I know you're furious with me because of M-dashed. But I have absolutely nothing to do with him anymore. We can go back to the way things were, right? Sierra's wrists throbbed from the tight grip, but Tiliel fiercely refused to let go. If even Sierra walked away from her now, she would truly have nothing left. Sierra forcefully yanked her hands free and let out a cold, mocking laugh. You are the one who ruined our friendship. And now that you've got no one else left, you come crawling back to me? Panicking, Tiliel desperately tried to explain. Actually, I've always. But giving her no chance to finish, Sierra cut her off abruptly. Even if you broke up with Duval, what's broken between us can never be fixed. Tiliel felt like her entire world was crashing down. She had absolutely no idea what she was going to do now. Then came Sierra's merciless final blow. Let's never see each other again. And I am totally done being the one who cleans up your messes every single day. With that, she turned to walk away. But the very next second, Tiliel lunged at her, sobbing and begging her not to go. But the shove sent Sierra stumbling backward over the balcony. Just as she was about to plummet over the edge, Crown Prince rushed out from the shadows and yanked Sierra back to safety just in the nick of time. The massive commotion instantly drew a crowd of nosy onlookers from the ballroom. Hearing the loud whispers and gasps from the crowd, the Crown Prince warned Tiliel to leave at once. But instead of listening, she actually lashed out, accusing him of meddling. This is between me and Sierra. What right do you have to butt in? The Crown Prince's face went completely dark. Are you seriously playing the victim right now? If I hadn't stepped in just a second ago, the consequences would have been deadly. With that, he wrapped his arm around Sierra and turned to leave. As they walked away, Sierra shot one last, icy glare over her shoulder. That single look made Tiliel finally realize Sierra was entirely done with her. She cried out Sierra's name, but Sierra just kept her head turned forward, never looking back. Leaving a shattered Tiliel all alone, completely surrounded by a crowd of harsh, judging eyes. Now that both M-dashed and Sierra had abandoned her, she had absolutely no one left in her corner. And yet, Sierra was practically swimming in everyone's love and adoration. The burning jealousy was driving Tiliel absolutely insane. Just then, a maid approached Tiliel and whispered that a highly esteemed figure wished to see her. Tiliel was just about to snap and tell the clueless maid to get lost, when she suddenly caught sight of the crest pinned to the maid's uniform. It was the absolute symbol of the imperial consort. The maid then softly added, "Her Highness feels incredibly sympathetic towards your current situation, my lady. Please, follow me to meet her." And just like that, the desperate and cornered Tiliel successfully latched herself onto the imperial consort. Meanwhile, the ritual to resurrect the cursed evil dragon went ahead exactly as planned. Since it was such a monumental event, only members of the founding families were permitted to attend. Sierra was incredibly anxious, terrified of whatever insane stunt the female lead might pull next. But to her utter shock, the female lead actually behaved perfectly throughout the entire ceremony. It wasn't until the ritual wrapped up without a single hitch that Sierra finally let out a massive sigh of relief. But her exhausted expression still drew the crown prince's worry, even though Sierra tried to put on a brave face and say she was perfectly fine. Yet, seeing the dark, bruised scratch marks on her hands, the crown prince felt his heart absolutely ache for her. He gently comforted her, telling her that none of this was her fault. He urged her to head home early, get some rest, and not overthink things. Right before stepping into the carriage to head home, Sierra turned to thank the crown prince. "I know that everything you do for me, Ray. I don't take a single bit of it for granted. Thank you for always staying by my side." Hearing those sweet words, the crown prince couldn't help but smile, completely overjoyed. After going through this whole ordeal together, the bond between the two of them grew even closer. However, right after they said their goodbyes, a young, white-haired boy suddenly sensed the dark aura of an evil dragon nearby. As soon as Sierra arrived home and stepped out of the carriage, May came happily trotting over to greet her. But when May noticed her lady's face pale with worry and pure exhaustion, she panicked, immediately asking what on earth happened at the ball. Sierra forced a gentle smile and assured her that nothing happened. She then asked May to go ahead and draw a warm bath for her. It wasn't until May left the room that Sierra finally let her guard down, her face instantly shifting back into deep worry and anxiety. To be honest, ever since she parted ways with Tiliel, she had been trying so hard to keep it together. She just couldn't understand why Tiliel had changed into someone like that. In the original book, she was supposed to be the beloved female lead that everyone adored. But just because I showed up, she turned into some dark, twisted yandere. Sitting there at her vanity, Sierra fell into a deep pit of guilt and self-blame. But wait, a second thought crossed her mind. Maybe this wasn't actually her fault. After all, it wasn't just the female lead acting weird. Even the male lead was totally off. The book clearly stated that he was a man cursed to easily go completely berserk. And yet, when the full red moon finally rose, he turned into an adorable little black dragon cub. Still, the thing that baffled her the absolute most was, why on earth the crown prince would ever agree to her totally absurd proposal of cheating on each other? Why did he hide his true identity from literally everyone else? Why would he go out of his way just to come see me? Sierra rubbed her temples, totally convinced that the male and female leads were definitely hiding some huge secret. Unable to wrap her head around it, she headed to the study to drown herself in work and kill some time. Right then, May walked in, looking incredibly troubled. Seeing how the maid kept hesitantly checking her expression, Sierra gently told May to just spit it out. Nervous, May slowly handed over a letter. "My lady, the Marquis says he's heading home right away. And he said that if he finds out you haven't gotten re-engaged, he won't show any mercy to the servants who wait on you." Hearing those words, Sierra stared in total disbelief. Then, she let out a cold scoff. She couldn't believe her own father could be so completely despicable, actually using the safety of her servants to blackmail her. Looking at poor May shivering in fear right in front of her, Sierra quickly reassured her not to worry at all. She promised she would do everything in her power to protect them. With her mind made up, Sierra headed straight to the guild to hash out a plan with Ryder. Honestly, the wealth Sierra's guild had secretly piled up was more than enough to buy out the Asht family 10 times over. And the whole reason she even started this guild was to finally break off the engagement with her fiancé. But of course, her scumbag of a father just had to go and strike a deal with the Asht family behind her back. When Ryder saw the letter that trashy father had sent to Sierra, he was absolutely appalled. It's the 22nd century. Who the hell still sells off their own daughter like this? Sierra, too, was completely furious over her scumbag father's pathetic threats. She was so tempted to just take the guild's money and smash it right into his stupid face. But, considering they were one of the founding noble families, running an underground, illegal syndicate could lead to some seriously deadly consequences. So, Sierra slammed her hands on the table and made a firm decision. "We are expanding the guild's business." Hearing this, Ryder instantly jumped right out of his seat. "Wait, didn't you strictly forbid me from expanding our operations before?" But Sierra smoothly replied that what she wanted now was a totally clean, legitimate business. This left Ryder completely scratching his head. This was a massive pivot from what they were used to. Not giving Ryder a single second to figure it out, Sierra quickly called an emergency meeting with all the guild's staff. When everyone got their hands on the business proposal, their faces instantly dropped. The drawing on the paper was painfully abstract. Honestly looked like some kind of twisted new torture device. But to their absolute shock, the very next moment, Sierra casually pointed over to a nearby skewer stall. She proudly announced that this would be their new signature item. Ryder held up the awful drawing, asking in pure disbelief. Wait, so this thing you drew is supposed to be a chicken skewer? Sierra gave a confident nod. Yep, it's the perfect, legitimate business to build my empire from scratch. The tough guys in the guild absolutely lost their minds on the spot. They were hardened criminals used to running massive, dangerous operations. Now they had to go open a chicken skewer stall? They were beyond furious. Well, all except for one guy, who eagerly raised his hand in support. As a hopeless romantic at heart, he had long been sick and tired of all the nasty, bloody mob scenes anyway. Alright, it's settled. Just as the plan was finalized, one of the guys raised a question. How exactly are these skewers supposed to attract customers? But Sierra came prepared. What she was selling weren't just your average chicken skewers. Instead of explaining, she told everyone to take a bite and judge for themselves. The moment the crew tasted the skewers, they were either crying their eyes out from the intense heat, or literally breathing fire. They had to chug 200 gallons of water just to recover. Sierra smiled and explained, these are the one and only ultra-spicy chicken skewers in the entire empire. Beside her, Ryder was coughing violently. Setting a fire inside someone's mouth is definitely a brand new way to torture people. Hearing Ryder's sarcastic remarks, Sierra wasn't mad at all. In fact, it reminded her of a certain fire-breathing little black dragon. So, Sierra decided to name the skewers after different dragon parts. Before long, everyone had the stall ready for the grand opening. Every item on the menu was named after a dragon part. And right when everyone was busy getting the skewers ready, the workload of 100 guild members got dumped straight onto Ryder, leaving him absolutely miserable. Seeing the skewer stall officially open for business, Sierra was thrilled that everything was going so perfectly. Suddenly, she heard a soft cooing sound. She looked around, and spotted the little black dragon flying straight toward her. Sierra quickly held out her hands to catch him. The moment the little guy landed safely, he started nuzzling affectionately against her chest. Looking down at the little black dragon, Sierra realized that him being in this tiny form was actually less suspicious. After everything that went down with Duval Tiliol, neither Duke Ashride nor the Crown Prince himself could be seen hanging around her right now. Even though she honestly wouldn't mind being in a juicy scandal with the Crown Prince. Just then, the little dragon pointed at the nearby stall, and started babbling excitedly. Sierra smiled and told him, this is the very first step of my Grand Mashed plan. Curious, the little guy fluttered over to take a look. But when he saw the menu, Dragon Horn, Dragon Heart, and Dragon Tail, he practically jumped out of his scales in terror. Whimpering, he bolted right back into Sierra's arms to hide. Sierra gently patted the shivering little dragon to comfort him. But right at that moment, the guys started yelling at the top of their lungs to draw a crowd. Freshly grilled dragon skewers, come get them while they're hot. Hearing that, the little dragon panicked and wriggled right out of Sierra's grip. Looking absolutely terrified, he hugged his little tail tightly, then frantically traced no on Sierra's palm. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, Sierra decided to prove it to him. She walked over to the stall and grabbed a skewer. The little dragon shook his head vigorously, refusing to touch it. So, Sierra took a big bite herself and said, see, it's literally just regular chicken. Then, she held it out to him again. Staring at the spot where Sierra had just taken a bite, the little dragon finally opened his mouth and took a chomp. Instantly, his eyes lit up with stars. Anything Sierra ate was automatically the most delicious thing in the world. And right as the little dragon was happily munching on the skewer, a mother and her young son happened to walk by. The little boy with a bowl cut tugged at his mom's sleeve. Mom, I want to eat what that flying lizard is having. Sierra couldn't help but sigh on the inside. Why does the Crown Prince always get mistaken for a lizard in this disguise? The mother and son walked up to the stall, and the little boy eagerly took a huge bite of the skewer. In less than a second, tears were streaming down his face from the intense spice. His mother panicked, and quickly grabbed the skewer to taste it herself, only to immediately start devouring it. The hilarious sight of the mother and son fighting over the spicy food instantly caught everyone's attention. Within minutes, a massive crowd had swarmed the stall. A huge, burly man saw a bunch of lightweights getting knocked out by the spice, and it fueled his ego. He slammed down 5 coins, demanding to challenge their absolute spiciest skewer. So, one of the more devious guys on the crew completely drowned a skewer in hot sauce, politely suggesting he map out the nearest emergency room beforehand. Watching the bustling, energetic crowd swarming her stall, Sierra couldn't help but smile. She excitedly whispered to the little dragon, this right here is the very first step in building my luminous merchant guild. Doing his part to draw in more customers, the Crown Prince purposely sat right in front of the kids, happily hugging a chicken skewer and munching away in pure bliss. But then, a curious little kid turned to Sierra and asked, Miss, is this lizard your pet? Sierra froze, looking awkwardly down at the little black dragon. But without missing a beat, she shamelessly nodded and claimed him. The kids immediately gasped in awe. Whoa, what's his name? Hearing that, the little dragon in her arms couldn't help but look up. Everyone was looking forward to seeing what name Sierra would pick, but who knew she was absolutely terrible at naming things. Just because the little guy could only make cooing sounds, she went ahead and named it Cuckoo. It made the baby dragon actually tear up. I mean, was that really supposed to be its name as a terrifying, vicious dragon? Once the kids ran off to eat their chicken skewers, Sierra gently scooped up the little dragon to thank it. Thanks to Cuckoo, her stall was completely packed with customers. They kept selling skewers until they were totally sold out and utterly exhausted. Her staff handed over the day's sales report, but he looked pretty confused. Why on earth was she going out of her way to donate a chunk of their profits to the temple? After all, even with the skewer stall booming every single day, that donation was still a massive expense. But Sierra just smiled, and told them to simply follow her orders. She also made sure they let the customers know about it. Honestly, she never really expected this tiny little skewer stall to rake in huge profits anyway. She just wanted to use this chance to get the name of her new merchant guild, Luminous, out there. But of course, some thick-headed idiots took the whole thing completely the wrong way. Listening to his subordinate's report, Duval couldn't help but feel a twinge of deep disdain toward Sierra. He smugly convinced himself that, since Sierra had lost the backing of the Asht family, she was so desperate and out of options that she had to invest in a measly skewer stall. To him, this pathetic little stunt was just Sierra, stubbornly putting on a brave face because she refused to admit defeat. Thinking about this, he instantly let out a sigh of relief. He gleefully fantasized that once Sierra faced reality, she'd come crawling right back to him. Then, he casually asked about the latest news on Marquis Lavalins, only to find out that the Marquis was stranded on the road because of a broken-down carriage. So, he had no choice but to order his men to go help him. And he made sure to tell them to keep a close eye on the Luminous Guild, too. Over the next few days, Sierra kept working right alongside her staff until the middle of the night. Seeing this, the Crown Prince couldn't help but worry about her health. He assumed she was pushing herself because she was terrified that the Asht family would try to ruin her guild's business. He gently told her not to worry. If Duval dared to come cause trouble, he definitely wouldn't let him get away with it. But Sierra explained that was only part of the reason. She was actually way more worried about her father's side of things. But the Crown Prince casually mentioned that it would still take a few days for the Marquis to return to the capital. This made Sierra feel a little suspicious. She had just found out about her father's carriage breaking down. Wait, Ray, did you kidnap my family's carrier pigeon or something? The Crown Prince's face instantly flushed bright red, and he stammered, completely at a loss for words. But under Sierra's relentless questioning, he had to sheepishly admit that, well, he intentionally sabotaged one of the carriage wheels. But I only did it because I wanted to be of some help to you, my lady. I know you could easily handle it all on your own, but I couldn't bear to sit back and do nothing. These genuine, heartfelt words from the Crown Prince struck right at Sierra's heart. Catching the warm, undeniably romantic tension between them, Sierra finally asked the question that had been weighing on her mind for so long. Ray, why are you being so incredibly good to me? The Crown Prince was clearly deeply moved by her words. But, in the end, he just couldn't bring himself to say it. Instead, he softly replied that it was because of their contract. Helping her break off her engagement was just part of their deal. Sierra couldn't help but feel a sting of disappointment at his answer. Looking at his dodging eyes and his nervous fidgeting, she could tell right away that Ray was lying. I know that we're only in this for mutual benefit. You help me break off my engagement, and I help you get your fiancé back. But, Ray, you never really planned on winning Tillow's heart back, did you? You two have crossed paths so many times, yet you haven't looked her in the eye even once. And honestly, even without Tillow's purification powers, you wouldn't be affected by the curse anyway. After saying that, Sierra pressed the Crown Prince once more, demanding to know his real reason for agreeing to this little fake cheating scheme with her. The Crown Prince stayed silent, because honestly, he didn't even know how to explain it himself. He gently reached out, taking Sierra's hand in his, and promised that he would tell her absolutely everything soon. He just begged her to give him a little more time. Seeing Sierra go quiet, the Crown Prince offered her a tender, reassuring smile. My lady, you're not mad at me, are you? Even though his voice was completely overflowing with warmth and affection, Sierra decided to drop it. All of a sudden, she was actually terrified of hearing the real answer from him. Maybe, it just wasn't the right time for him to explain everything yet. So, she offered him a soft apology. She told him she wasn't angry at all, and that she was the one who was wrong for pushing him so hard. You don't have to answer me right now. I was just a little curious, that's all. Even though Sierra didn't mean to blame him, the Crown Prince still felt a deep sense of loss the moment she gently pulled her hand away.